Doctor, thank you so much for being with us here on the podcast. It's such a gift to have you. I've known about you for a while. I know that you live in Texas and you're a professor at the
Yes.
University of Texas. And
hmm
you were a recent contributor to this amazing book, Lived Experience in the Search for Truth. An amazing compilation of essays edited by Deborah Savage and Robert Fastigi, just wonderful thinkers in this book. And you're featured in there quite beautifully. I really enjoyed reading your essay, and I wanted to just pick your brain a little bit about what you wrote. And I think our listeners would be eager just to kind of step inside of this conversation a little bit. You speak
Sure.
about transsexualism and transhumanism. Just to kind of start off, could you maybe define those? Like, what do you actually mean by transsexualism and transhumanism as we sort of step into this reality?
Transsexualism, the term transsexualism is used by some people as a medical term. I don't. I would rather speak of gender dysphoria
Mm.
or sexual dysphoria, discomfort with my own sex, perhaps a desire to be the other sex, or a confused thought that I am the other sex. I think that's better described as gender dysphoria. The way I use the term transsexualism is for the ideology
Mm.
that it is possible to be, that it's possible to change your sex. Now, that comes in different versions. There are some people who think, well, it's not really a change because I'm a man in a woman's body, or I'm a woman in a man's body, and I think that that's a delusion. And there are others who say, well, no, I should just get the choice of which kind of body I want to have. I am a man, but I would rather be a woman. And maybe some year I'll be a hermaphrodite.
Yeah.
This is sort of on the horizon. The idea that you might change your sex, like changing your hairstyle or having a cosmetic enhancement. That's transsexualism. It's the idea that we can get behind the confining categories of biological sex, and create our own sexuality. Transhumanism, the other term that you used, taken from the title of my article, is another trans. Trans means beyond, right? It's the idea that we can transcend our own humanity, that our nature isn't so much what we are. It doesn't define us. Rather, it's a shackle on what we are or what we could be. We can be unburdened by what has been, as somebody has said recently. We can we can we can change our nature.
Yeah.
Now, transsexualism is just one aspect of that. It's the only aspect that most people have heard of. But transhumanism has been around a lot longer than transsexualism. The term, I think, was first used by Huxley uh, in the early 20th century, and he saw this on the horizon. C.S. Lewis saw it on the horizon too.
Mm.
He thought that there's an effort afoot to abolish man,
Mm.
to say that we're beyond all that stuff now, being human. We can get beyond it. We can make up what we'll be. We can change human nature. So the sexual aspect of it is transsexualism, but this could mean anything. There are people who talk about uploading themselves into computers. There are people who talk. This is serious.
Mm.
I mean, it sounds crazy, but some people are very, very serious about this. That maybe astronauts should have their legs cut off on long space journeys. That maybe soldiers could be the military doctors could rejigger their genes and their neurons so that they'd have a perfect memory for maps and not need to sleep for days on end.
Yeah.
And we could electronically control them so that it wouldn't be possible for them to disobey their orders. And all of this sort of thing. Research on those lines is being undertaken by the military of our country, Russia, China. It's a very scary thing. Of course, industrialists are interested in this. Wouldn't it be nice to have workers who never went on strike? Wouldn't it be? Or we can release chemicals in the air of the office so that everybody feels good.
Yeah. Wow.
And this is, it's a kind of it's the same sort of aspiration as the ancient practitioners of witchcraft and magic, except that these people are trying to do it with science.
I want to take a couple steps back here because I do think some of our listeners are tempted by the idea that, this whole LGBTQ reality really doesn't affect me. I may be bumping into it at Starbucks or whatever, but I need not sort of muddle in those waters. But when I read your article, I realized the pervading effect of these ideologies and how they affect all of us. So maybe you can speak a little bit to that, how we as rational human persons, naturally political beings, just by being a part of the polis? Like, how can we be more aware that, no, I need to be concerned and sobered by this because it's all around me?
Well, there is the idea that I don't have to pay attention to it is rooted. The roots of that idea is pretty sensible. Is that there's something crazy about this.
Mm.
There's something that's sort of lunatic about this. As a matter of fact, I'm writing a book about the lunacies that infect modern life and the crazy ideas that are deadly serious. And so we think, well, that's crazy. Giggle, giggle. That doesn't have anything to do with me. We laugh it off. But the thing is, it's not funny when you find that the public schools may be encouraging a child to start calling himself a different sex and to without even telling the parents, to start preparing him for so-called gender transition surgery. This is child mutilation. This is child abuse. But this is a big deal in the public schools, and don't think it's not in your own school district. It already is. The more well-publicized cases where it's been outed are mostly in California, a few other places, but this is going on everywhere. You've got filthy things put in school libraries, and apart from the sexual aspect of this, transsexualism is all over. I mentioned these military applications, these industrial applications. People say, if everybody else on the block is giving their kids genetic treatments and drug treatments so that they have hyper focus on school tests, you don't want to be behind, do you? And it's going to come to the point where it becomes more and more difficult to resist this satanic temptation. We're going to be wanting to monkey with our brains, monkey with our genes, monkey with our hormones, monkey with our bodies, monkey with our very conception of who we are, and deny that there is any deep down who we are. So it really does affect all of us. People think, well, just as long as they don't get in my face, it's going to be in everybody's face. And if we had our eyes open, we'd see that it's already in our faces much more than most of us think that it is.
Yeah, your article was sobering in that regard, and I realized too that we've had a hand in where we're at today. I mean, I'm just thinking, kind of taking many steps back, but thinking about the contraceptive culture. So if sex is no longer about life, and marriage is no longer between a man and a woman, and no longer about children. And then if, like, the gay thing, like if someone can be gay because of a feeling, doesn't that open the door to a host of identifications? And it sort of pays homage. It pays homage to this thesis of I feel, therefore I am. But I think in today's culture, it just is, well, my gay uncle is really nice, so I want to keep that. But the trans, the evil trans reality, it's like, wait a minute, I don't think we're connecting the dots here.
Yeah, and being nice is not the issue. I mean, all of us are afflicted with temptations to sin, and all of us have, I hope, repented sins in our background. Every last one of us. This isn't about, but we may be nice. This isn't about whether we are nice. It isn't even a judgment of persons. It's a judgment of whether this is a good thing to do. You mentioned contraception. Contraception is really, I tend to think of it as the first transhumanist technology. Most people wouldn't think of it that way.
Well, please say more about that. That's fascinating.
Sure, because when contraceptives were invented, people began to reason as though we've now changed human nature. There was a natural connection between sexual intercourse and procreation, but there isn't anymore. We've broken that connection. Now, we can now make sex be something with no consequences. What I want to suggest is that trying to sever things from their natural consequences itself has consequences. We invented contraceptives. People said, oh, there won't be any more out-of-wedlock pregnancies. And look what's happened. The advent of contraceptives actually changed the way people thought about sex and changed their behavior so much that even with contraceptives, they're having the whole institution of marriage is beginning to unravel, and people are having sex any old way and then abandoning the children. The IVF is something like that. I have the greatest compassion for people who are infertile and can't have children. But that's not the solution.
Yeah.
The solution is to, you seek medical assistance in conceiving. If that's not possible, consider adoption.
Yeah.
But to take procreation out of the context of the loving embrace of the father and mother, and instead put it something in a petri dish, is turning procreation into something like factory production. Now, that's a very transhuman sort of thing. It ought to remind us of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, in which children were conceived in flasks, and then when they were ready to take up their lives in the outer world, they would be quote unquote decanted. It turns it into something like that. Now, you said that you remarked in your question that this is like, it opens the door to a lot of other identifications, and that's true. We have people now who say that say, well, I'm really a fox. There's quite a bit of this.
Yeah.
Some people even insist that they be regarded as a fox by their coworkers. They will, but now we often say, well, gee, you can't help it. That's how you were born. Nobody was born as a fox.
Yeah.
Suppose that somebody said, well, I really am a fox in a human's body, so I want to see the surgeons and have my frontal lobes removed, and I'll have some hormone treatments so that I can grow a furry coat, and I'll live out in the wild and live in a hole and eat mice. Would that turn you into a fox? Would you then be a fox? No, you'd be a cruelly damaged human being.
Wow.
There are people out there who have asked to have their limbs amputated because they identify as paraplegics, who have asked to have their spinal cord severed because they identify as paralytics. One woman said that she identified as a blind woman, and she actually, as I understand it, talked her psychiatrist into pouring Lysol into her eyes under a controlled setting in order to blind her.
Wow.
Now, there are medical articles, I cite them in my essay, seriously asking, is this a good medical treatment? If somebody identifies as not having his arms, would it be a good medical intervention to sever his arms so that he feels better? And of course, that's mutilation. That's no longer healing. The medical art is to restore function,
Right.
not to destroy function.
And you even look at the word therapeutic, to administer to, or to medically resolve, and how we've so split apart that word to mean something that it's not. I even think of the conversion therapy debates today, which sort of demonize any effort of somebody to live in accord with their biological sex, but yet that is seen as coercive and dangerous. But yet what you're speaking of people really confused and needing medical and psychological intervention.
Yes, needing compassion, but this kind of so-called medical intervention is false compassion.
Yeah.
It isn't being compassion rooted in the virtue of love should mean having a concern for the true good of the other person. It doesn't just mean paying attention to his feelings, because his feelings may be contrary to his true good. We know that when we're raising small children. Oh, what if somebody said, "Oh, the little boy wants a 10th piece of chocolate cake. Look, he feels bad about it. Go ahead and give it to him. He may get sick, but we can help him to purge in the bathroom." And anybody would recognize that's a crazy approach to child rearing, but this is what we're doing with well, in fact, very young people, some children, some young adults, and other confused people. There's this idea. You mentioned you used the slogan, "I feel, therefore I am," and it is the case that in the case of transsexualism, for instance, people say, well, this is medically demonstrated that there are people who are men in women's bodies. No, it hasn't been. What the medical evidence shows is that you have a man's body, you have a woman's body. You can certainly medically ascertain that the guy feels uncomfortable with that. You can medically ascertain that he says he is a woman in a man's body. That doesn't medically demonstrate that he is a man in a woman's body. There is no scientific support whatsoever for that idea. It's also interesting that the incidence of transsexualism and some of these other strange identifications, it used to be like that.
Hmm.
But now it's growing. You wouldn't think that such a thing could grow.
Why do you think
but
that
it's
is?
become hip.
Hmm.
It's become popular. One of my friends said that his little girls' friends, 50%, half of his little girl's friends in the public school, half of her girlfriends say that they're really boys now.
Hmm.
Half of them.
Wow.
It's just cool. Now, most of them will grow out of it. Most of them will not go through, but the confusion is going to damage them in the long term if it isn't corrected. And some of them will go through to these surgical interventions and self-mutilation.
In your research, what was the effect of social media in this regard of having this sort of social contagion of this is hip, this is cool?
Well, I don't know really much more than most people do about the effect of social media. So my sense of this is impressionistic here. But you look at TikTok and all of these kinds of things, and who do they glorify? Who do they glamorize?
Hmm.
They're not glamorizing people who are thinking clearly about themselves, who are at peace with human nature, who want to affirm what they are in the eyes of God, but what they glamorize and glorify and present as cool and hip is the people who are the most confused about this. This is connected. So many of these identifications have to do with the sex. This is connected with the fact that we've so overwhelmingly sexualized our society and the younger generation. When I was in school, I'm a geezer now, right? When I was in high school, the high school administration might be upset if the girls were wearing shorts that were a little shorter than they thought that they should wear, or if they were frayed at the bottom instead of having nice, neat cuffs. But now, many young girls, even as young as 12, let's say, want to dress like hookers.
Hmm.
And they're encouraged.
Yeah.
It has been shown. There is research that has shown that the more clothes a girl takes off on TikTok, and YouTube and so forth, the more likes she gets.
Wow.
This is powerfully affirming.
Wow.
It's the interactive aspect of this, because all of these people out there who want to approve of perverse things that you're doing are pushing you in a certain direction. Everybody wants to be liked.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be approved, and that's not wrong, because God made us social beings. This is a part of our nature. You mentioned that we are political animals. We're social. That doesn't mean that we're like cows and we just have an instinct to hang around in herds, but it means that we're a kind of a being, so that for us, the good life isn't even good unless we're sharing it in communion with others.
Hmm.
And so, of course, we care about what others think about it. But that good impulse, like any good impulse, like sexuality, like ambition, like the potentiality for anger over an injustice, can be distorted, can be perverted, and that's what's happening here.
You know, I wanted to say a comment on you that you made about IVF and just the increase of that. It's really quite staggering how many people are resorting to IVF these days. And obviously that's a painful point. My wife and I have struggled ourselves with fertility, but big shout out to the Paul VI Institute out in Omaha, Nebraska, who are just wonderful thinkers and physicians, Dr. Hilgers, who founded it, in looking at the underlying causes of infertility. But this leads me to my question. What do you think it is that drives this? Because there's so many people who don't know about, for example, an institute like Paul VI. It's more just, okay, well, let's funnel you into an IVF line, but yet they're not. There's no therapeutic help to help the underlying causes of why one might be experiencing infertility. And I'm using therapeutic there in the sense of medical treatment, medical
Yes,
intervention.
yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I do know exactly what you're saying. Now, there are two aspects of this. One, we might discuss why are so many people, more people now than before, struggling with infertility. There have always been people struggling with infertility, and why is that? Why is there such an increased number? But the other is why are people being pushed into IVF and not? And many people, as you point out, don't even know about alternative treatments. Um, well, it's partly because of this, well, transhumanism again, this idea that we don't really believe that the body has an organic pattern, that it has purposes built into it. We don't really trust any of its capacities for healing. Medicine ought to. Sometimes the body needs help to heal, obviously, but we and but medicine ought to cooperate with that instead of trying to replace it. What we think is, well, forget about healing. I can just do this procedure or give you this drug that bypasses the order of your body and does something else. Wouldn't that be easier?
Mm.
It's like young women who are told sometimes now, well, it's inconvenient to have your period every month, so why don't you just you don't have dysmenorrhea, you don't have any medical condition that would justify this, but why don't you just take these pills that will suppress your period, and then you can do athletics or do whatever you want. You won't ever have to be troubled with this every month. Um, it's a transhumanist thing again, and these things cause long-term damage. It reminds me of a line that was in the four quartets. I can't remember the name of the poet now, but he said that we're dreaming of systems so perfect that no one has to be good.
Mm.
Now it's also true that we're dreaming of systems so perfect that nobody has to be healed, so perfect that nobody has to really worry about anything. We'll just intervene in everything. Medicine isn't, if the first thing that you think of is, I'll hijack your biology, whether it's through a birth control pill, through IVF, through suppression of menopause, through mood enhancing pills when you really don't have clinical depression, you're not cooperating with the orderly pattern of the body and mind, but you're trying to bypass it,
Mm.
and that's that transhumanist impulse again.
Yeah, you quoted something here, and I'm quoting you in your essay, which was excellent. Rather than thinking human nature as what we are, transhumanists think of our nature as a shackle on what we are.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And maybe we can speak a little bit into that, but I kind of double, triple underlined.
Yeah, well, that's how it is. We think, and if you really do take that line, what it means is that I'm a nothing.
Mm.
Um, on one level, it's abandoning your own nature. That's a shackle on me. From another point of view, oh yeah, you're embracing your nature, but you're only embracing one aspect of your nature, your will.
Mm.
I want to do this, and you're not even tethering that will to another aspect of your nature, which is your reason. You're insisting on this one thing and pulling it out and making it everything. I want. You said I feel, therefore I am. In this case, it's I want, therefore I am. I will, therefore I am. It's like the primeval temptation of our first parents. It's very much the same thing. It's also to people who are doing research in these areas, it's intoxicating too, because it gives them the idea that they are gods, that we are gods.
Yeah, you mentioned a story in the essay about going with your students on like a profession. It was like a professional exhibit or of sorts, and if a
Oh yeah.
physicist was speaking. Maybe you can let us in on that experience, but I think it speaks to what you just said.
Most of my college students are sophomores, juniors, seniors, and graduate students. But I have, on a couple of occasions, taught freshmen, and I taught what is called a freshman signature course with a colleague. This is so that the freshmen won't just be taught everything by by teaching assistants. They'll actually get to see some real professors, and they try to make the professors who design these courses jump through the hoops, so it'll be a really rewarding experience. Well, one of the hoops that we had to jump through was that if we wanted to teach a signature course, we had to take our students to some College of Liberal Arts events. So we did. We took them. We thought this will be good for them. We'll take, they're only freshmen. They're fresh out of high school. We'll take them to a choose your major night. And the choose your major night, here they had, on this side of the stage, there were the professors representing various disciplines in which you could major, biology, chemistry, political science, sociology, psychology, history, whatever. And on the other side of the stage were so-called student leaders, and they would ask them questions. It was a bizarre experience. I would never take anybody to this again, or encourage them to go. The fellow who represented the physics department, I don't know how typical his views might be there, but he was encouraging the students to be physics majors by talking about uploading our brains into computers, bypassing all physical limitations. He thought this was the future. Why wouldn't you major in physics so you can get in on the ground floor of that? Wow. Now, that doesn't seem to me... Eternal life as a computer program doesn't seem like life. And it wouldn't be you anyway. It would be the program imitating you. What they forget is that if they supposedly upload you into a computer, what do they do with your body that they got the patterns out of? Well, they destroy that. Yeah. There were other strange things that went on at that, but they aren't so much on our topic.
What do you think about as you take a survey of your students, what are they attracted to that? How does that fall for them?
Some are not. I'm finding a change. When I first began teaching about this, and of course that I teach on natural law, most of my students just couldn't take it seriously. It seemed like Marvel comic book stuff. But on the other hand, Marvel comic book stuff is being taken much more seriously now too, right? And when I showed them articles that people had written about this, when I gave examples of these kinds of things happening and had them read some of these things, when they began to take it seriously. But now they divide. Some of them are horrified, and I think that that's a very sound reaction. Some of them have a reaction more like the one that you described at the beginning of our podcast today. Well, it doesn't affect me. That's just some crazy stuff. Or they might say, well, it's going to happen if it's going to happen, and I can't do anything about it anyway. Maybe I'm on the wrong side of history. Everything is foreordained. And a few people are attracted to it. Most of those who are attracted to it are attracted to transhumanism, not because of the sexual things, not because they want soldiers who never sleep, and not because of any of those things industrialists might care about, but because they're attracted to the prospect of eternal life on this earth. Which, when you think about it, is not a very attractive idea. What would it mean if we all lived in this life forever? I suspect that it would be we're fallen creatures. We're not made to live forever in this category. I suspect that it would become despair. And it would also mean, in order not to run out of room, you'd have to stop having children. I can't imagine a world without the laughter of children. Wow. I can't imagine that that's a better world where we're all just getting older and older. We've been around for centuries. It also means nothing ever changes. The same old people who controlled everything are going to keep living. They're not going to be replaced by others. There are no generational changes, no better ideas, no reforms. Everything is going to be static. But the transhumanists don't think about that. They say, we will be gods, knowing good and evil.
I'll end with this. This has been delightful, by the way. I can listen to you all day. You teach on natural law, which I think is a lot of people don't know what that is, and maybe some think of it more as like a Catholic thing than maybe a Christian thing at large, or just a natural thing at large. But it seems like the natural law is so pivotal in our discussions today. Just thinking about what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to not only be a responsible human in the United States, but to respect life and how it's all interconnected. When I'm hearing you, Dr. J, I just hear the interconnectedness of everything from pro-life to trans to abortion to divorce to contraception. It's all connected, you know? And I think when I hear the natural law, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking of kind of going into the depths and seeing the foundation on which all of this is built and the little fissures that we've experienced and maybe live in our own broken human experiences. But what's the hope? How can the natural law bring us a bit of hope in this season?
Well, I think it can bring us a lot of hope. Now, here's why. The knowledge of natural law is not going to be salvation. The knowledge of natural law alone does not mean reconciliation with God, forgiveness of sins. It doesn't tell you anything about that. The greatest natural law thinkers have been Christians and talked about that a lot. But they said we need something more than natural law for that. We need express revelation. I agree. But just taking natural law for what it is, it means this is our design. This is the pattern according to which we have been made. These are the rules that we need to follow in order to flourish, in order to attain our good. The ones that if we violate, we will violate to our ruin. These are the things that are embedded in our conscience, that are written on the heart. These are, take for instance the principles of faithful marriage. We seem to have been made with a view to marriage. People who just hook up are not happy. They experience increasing emptiness. It's no accident that you would even think that people who act like that would say, well, at least I'm more sexually satisfied. Actually, they report lower levels of sexual satisfaction, higher levels of suicide, and all of this other sort of thing. These are the principles by which we have to follow. Now, the encouraging thing about this is you can ignore your nature, but it's still there. You can ruin yourself, but even ruining yourself, even acting contrary to your nature, you can't destroy it. It is what you are. And its reparative tendencies, its healing tendencies are still there too. Now, like everything else in the fall, they are, the healing tendencies of our nature are diminished, but they're there. So, in the long run, the only way that people can be fulfilled, the only way that they can be happy is that if they do live according to the natural law. A society like ours, which is flying in the face of God himself and also flying in the face of the design that he built into the created order, which includes us, cannot survive. It will have to either turn back or it'll be replaced by something else. Now, I would rather that it turn back. And there are all kinds of strong impulses in our nature that push us that way. But even if we don't turn back and we're destroyed and something else takes the place of this culture, there's a kind of a good news there, because that culture that takes its place is not going to be doing what this one did. It's not going to be doing what brought this one to ruin. So in the short run, there are these reparative tendencies. People need to ask themselves questions. Instead of taking pills because they're unhappy, they have to say, why am I unhappy? Instead of saying, let me mess around with my nature and monkey with the genome so that even if I'm living in an unnatural way, I can be happy. Let's think instead, what is the way that creatures of our nature need to live to be happy? If they can only be brought to confront the questions, to face them instead of evading them and trying to bury their own self-knowledge in waves and layers of self-deception, they often can be brought back. And I think that's very good news. It's kind of grim good news. It means the path back is through pain, but there is a path back.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. Just in a nutshell, I lived a homosexual, promiscuous life in the seminary, outside of the seminary community. And I remember being brought to that reality of why in this sort of hedonistic way that I've been acting out, trying to secure my own pleasure, to really address my pain, why am I not looking at my pain, and what will happen if I do? And
Yeah.
it changed my life, you know? It changed
Hmm.
my life. And it reminds me of what JP2 says, you know, that we've all been given our humanity as a task. I love that. You know, our humanity is a task to integrate. Like, yeah, I have a nature and I need to respect it. I need to listen to it. Like what Pope Benedict would call the human ecology, to listen to your nature. I love that. I think it's so liberating, you know? And you are a champion of that, Dr. J. You've been so encouraging to me in my own healing journey. So I really am grateful for you.
Well, thanks. I think that the greatest temptation not to find a path back is that people think, well, pain, that's just the way it is. I'm going to settle. We weren't made to settle. We were made to long for fulfillment, to flourish in this life and in the life to come. And we have to keep seeking it.
Dr. J, thank you so much for joining us on Desert Streaming. It's really a gift to have this conversation with you.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure to me. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank
And
you.
I hope that your listeners have enjoyed it.
Amen. Thank you. God bless you.